Well, hello there, everyone. It is Kristi. It is Sunday. And it is time for Weekend Winters. How y'all doing? I am reorganizing my setup, so I'm a little bit in chaos. But let's get right to it, rather than nattering around. I still technically am on vacation this week. So I'm tidying. I'm like cleaning dust off as I'm doing my live show. That's an interesting combined career, is live streaming while you clean. Puts in and showing. Anyway, as a consequence of me being on holiday, I've been super lazy, and I decided to continue to be lazy today. So with your permission, which I guess you don't really technically like have a way to communicate it because I'm sort of the boss of the show, but I have decided this week we're just going to do some fluff. So 1 week off of the philosophy of social science. It wasn't that I couldn't stomach it, but it just felt like too much like work to I think we did structural Marxism last time. Yes. So from Kuhn to the Strong program. So next week y'all, on this text. Alrighty dighty. For today then, I got you some junk food that we can gnaw on together. And the other thing I'll say before I get going is yeah, I guess real talk. Sirens. I don't know if you guys can hear that. The last year's been really difficult for everyone, right? We've all had, some people have had more stress than others, but I think just generally, I think we can all sympathize with the amount of stress that everyone's been under. And mine, so I live alone, so I have and in a pandemic, you're not supposed to meet people. So I've been super withdrawn. And it's kind of been a downward inward spiral of becoming less and less social. And I'm trying to, because I get my second jab this week. I will be fully vaccinated after I'm done being sick. So after Tuesday, I'll be fully vaccinated. And so that will be one drain, I guess, off of me. Hey, Lonely Wolf and DN Fan. I'll say hi to everybody a second. I'm being emotionally open here. And the other thing was, in the last 12 months, bit more, I wrote a book. I wrote a whole damn book. I had some co-authors, but I'd say like 80% of the text in there is my original stuff, 85%. And then not only did I have to write the book, I had to be my own editor and my own typesettist and my own designer, graphic designer, and I did get help with the references. I did have a student assistant who helped me with all of the footnotes and all of the references. But that was creatively a huge drain on me, and as a consequence, I didn't have energy left over for YouTube. Having taken a week off, I feel better. I feel a little bit better. You felt sleepy after your shot. Yeah, I'm expecting to not be too sick this time because I was really sick with the AZ shot last time. So my aim is, now that I'm feeling like there's not such a drain on my creativity, I think I'm going to revamp my Sunday show. I won't change the time or anything, but I like the little nerd corner that we've been doing, and I think I'll come back to the book in a second. And so I think what I might do is change up the show so that it's like in 20-minute segments. I've thought about this in the past, but I haven't really done it. So I think I'm gonna make an intro for my show. We're gonna have some segments that will be more routine. There will be still opportunities for spontaneity, but I'm just kind of tired of having to come up with content every week. And so if I have a structure of what I know I need to fill, it might be easier. And the channel hasn't had a revamp. The content hasn't had a revamp in a while. So yeah, look for that. My goal now is July 1st. I said that out loud to people, so now I'm gonna have to do it. And it'll still be the same happy hour. It'll just be hopefully a little bit more chunked in terms of themes. All right, so just really quickly on the book, it is currently with the people who are technically the publishers of it, which is the Consortium for European Social Science Data Archives. And they have a time period to look over the final text and then it's going to be uploaded as sort of like an ebook to Zenodo, which is an online open access archive service. And anyone can go and download it, and it'll be a Creative Commons licensed PDF that anyone can download for free. However, it's fine, but now that I've done 2 versions of it, I wrote the initial manuscript, and then I went back and redid the entire thing, but looked at it again for a second, I guess a second edition before it was even published. And I can see how there's a possibility, if I put some time into it on the weekends and whatnot, maybe hire someone to help out, that it could turn into like a little ebook with proper sources and things that I could like sell on Amazon or things like that. So I think the next thing for that will be taking the Creative Commons version of it and kind of jazzing it up a bit to make it worth like $2.99 or $3.99 for someone to pay a little bit extra to get some of the features not offered in the free version available. So yeah, that's what's happening with that. You might see me like starting to plug a book on social media and on my channel a lot, or even like make a little commercial. I don't know what's going to happen with it. But it's called the name got changed very late in the process, and I'm trying to remember exactly the wording of the name. Lights, Camera, Action, Teach. A handbook for creating educational video content. And it's targeted specifically at people who want to make content for long-term archiving on YouTube of an educational nature. So it's not like a beauty tutorial, aesthetics, or it's not how to do game streaming. It's not how to do, whatever online. It is very much targeted for people who want to create an educational video or content series or anything like that. So, the second wasn't so bad. I'm really hoping my second one isn't that bad. I really, really am. Okay, so that's enough of me being super self-indulgent and also explaining, oh yeah, we're not going to quite get to our lessons today. So let me say hi to everyone in the chat, because I have seen you, but you haven't seen yourselves. I'm like, yeah, that's okay. All right. I really need a haircut. It's really getting to be super, super long. Gosh. All right, but I'm going to be fully vaccinated soon, so that'll be good. Righty dighty. Yeah. This is the one I want. This is the camera I want, except hold on a second. This camera, I need to no, I don't you know how to do that thing? Yeah, okay. Oh, that's better. Okay. That'll work now. All right. Boom. Look at that. TV magic. I was in a big screen and now I'm in a small screen. I am very much assuming that I will have to take sick time on Wednesday this week. So yeah, that's definitely part of the plan. Maybe even Tuesday too. I should probably just submit for sick time on Tuesday and Wednesday. And if I have to work, I'll just get ahead of myself, right? Not if I have to work. If I'm not sick, then I can just get ahead of myself. All right. So yeah, that looks, meh, that's fine. I mean, that'll do for our show, right? Okay. So we're going to look at, PragerU is the worst. I mean, we already know this. But we're going to have a look at a PragerU video after I say hi to everybody who's shown up in the chat. Thank you so much with that English. Trans Gamer Girl, I'm going to see her in a few hours. We're going to be doing some D&D on my D&D Gaming with Kristi channel. Herbie is in the chat. Hello, Herbie. Angus 987. Evening. DN fan, good to see you again. Lee Spanner, good morning to you too. Thank you for stopping by, my friend, my buddy, Lonely Wolf. Mwah, mwah. Hope you are doing well. The Lucky Wanderer. Yes, I am both leftist, but in my own channel, I am complete dictator. Let's see. Oh, who are you? Hello, Chalk. I'm so horrible with ways. Chalkinona Shay? I'm sure that is something that sounds beautiful when you pronounce it correctly, and my apologies. But welcome. Gertjan? Hi! So, can I just call you Choke? Or Chalk? Chalky? Like Chachi? No. Apart from some tiredness, you were fine after your both shots. Your youngest daughter, had COVID for the second time. 2 times having COVID. Oh, that is really unlucky. Oh, man. Wow. Yikesy, yikesy. That would be very, very, yes, like stressful, I would find. I want to know, I like making math videos for instructional purposes. Oh, yeah, sure. So, yeah, I can definitely, I can get you an advanced copy. Anyone who wants, it's Creative Commons license. So it's not like if I hand it out, I'm violating my own copyright license. It's all free. But, like if you want, but it currently exists in a Word document. And so if you'd prefer it in a PDF format, you have to do that work yourself. But yeah, I'd have on the book release, I don't have a date yet. The main office hasn't like said, okay, you know, like for them, it's just another piece of administrative work to process and, you know, accept or send back for some revisions. But yeah, hopefully by this month or at the very latest in August, I'll be able to do some promotional stuff and maybe even some CESDA sponsored tutorials for little parts of it as well. Maybe like little, you know, teaser or like 1 hour things or something. So yeah, I'll let y'all know. Okay, with me and my plugging out of the way, my own shameless plugs. Get sports out of politics. Interesting. As you know, Kevin has made this point several times when it's come up, but the double standards here on what counts as politics is indicative even of the centering and assumed normalization of values that are contested. Okay, Kristi, what does that mean? The short translation is PragerU doesn't see military jingoism or the glorification of the military as being political, which is ridiculous. Of course, military, the use, how it's deployed, its history, the problems of the military in terms of its lack of process of taking seriously assault cases and protecting the safety of its soldiers, the fact that it preys on poor people. You know, there's a whole lot of things that are political about the military. But the goal of white supremacy, or one of the goals, I mean, there's many goals of white supremacy, but one of the tactics, shall we say, rather than a goal, we'll call it a tactic. One of the tactics of white supremacy is to present its values as default. To present white culture as the default culture, the assumed culture, the normal culture, the expected culture, and other things are deviant, or, you know, like white people are letting, you know, are allowing others to be, you know, like from that perspective, right? Oh, look how nice, you know, this is the whole mentality of people who say, oh, when people talk about women getting the right to vote, they'll say things like, well, you know, men gave you that right. And I'm like, no, men were denying women that right forever. You don't get a pat on the back for not oppressing a group anymore. But that sense of entitlement of like, thank me because I let you vote is precisely the mentality we're talking about. It is the assumed, it's patriarchy. It has to do with the assumption of, you know, like violent masculine norms are considered like socially acceptable and the way that we should organize our society. So keep in mind while we watch this video that they're only objecting to politics when it's about living up to the American ideals of equality, not when it's about questioning taxpayer use or taxpayer funding of military pursuits and agendas across the globe that have been and continue to be, in some cases, immoral. All right, so Lonely Wolf is gonna terrorize us all now. I still have that image of Trump's butt in tight tennis pants burned into my brain. Keep sports out of politics. Yeah, keep politics out of sports. Yes, both. I took the boot off your neck after you struggled for years. I deserve thanks. That's, yeah, lucky wonder. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Or, you know, oh, look at us. Ooh, the white people were so nice because we freed the slaves. No, white people were like complicit in either allowing the institution of slavery until it affected, you know, like their interests, or they were the ones actually participating in the slave industry, the human enslavement industry. So yeah, you don't get a pat on the back for not criming. You don't get a pat on the back for not doing a genocide anymore. That's, yeah. Okay, so let us look at the propaganda from PragerU, basically claiming that to engage in things, to engage in activities focused on liberty and justice for all is un-American. That's going to be the basic premise, I think. All right, I'll check the volume on this, and I'll just let it run if it looks okay. 3, 2, 1.
Pro sports has become woke sports.
Ooh, it's a little
and that's a problem, not just for athletics, but for all of us. Sport has the power to unite people in a way that little else does.
You know, I'm just going to say, I wonder if, okay, can I, let's just get a vote in the chat. Yes, if you think PragerU, if PragerU was around in the 1940s, would decry the desegregation of sports. Just get a yes if you think they would, an N if you think, no, PragerU would be all about that freedom. Because if sports is somehow separate from politics, then sports should still be segregated. Right? Because it was politics that pushed this issue for desegregation of American sports. So if it was okay to be political when it came to desegregating the industry, the sports industry, why is it not okay to have a political opinion on the murder of Black people, the murder of people of color? I don't see a difference. I know they want to draw a line, but I don't think anyone, well, maybe who knows? I don't think this person would say politics should have stayed out of sports and not been desegregated. I'm just going to point that out. Of course they would support, of course Prager would support segregation. Like, oh, get your liberal politics out of my racially pure sports.
It is more powerful than governments in breaking down racial barriers.
That's just not true. I'm sorry, but this is a completely sexist, self-absorbed, ridiculous comment. How is sports more like all right, so let's I think sports and Black bodies. Here's again this performative notion of America is this great place. And there were times back in the day where it was fine to have these positions on politics. It was fine to use sports for politics, but not today. So if sports is more powerful than governments in breaking down racial barriers, why would you not use that power to break down racial barriers? Like, if it is more powerful and your goal is to break down racial barriers, why would you deny a role for that in sports then? What? Desegregation, okay. Black Lives Matter, not. Why? Oh. All right. Yes, so one of the things that researchers have found happened because of white supremacy is that, white supremacy will find ways to rationalize itself and create. People will build narratives that allow them to hold cognizant dissonant views in their minds. White racists will, just like white racists before them, happily take the talents, work, and efforts of Black people while still denying them their humanity. It's not as if the racists who are chanting at these football events are going to be disappointed if their team wins because a person of color, a player of color, scores the goal. They'll take that and they'll just reduce that person to a good footballer, but deny them their humanity. Hi, Michael. Good to see you. So let's have a look at this, just the first part of this article, to talk about the deeply ingrained racism of white supremacists and other like racist people, or whether they be white, majority white, but also others, to understand that just because you applaud a black player or a Hispanic player or an Asian player because they're winning for your team, that doesn't mean you respect them as humans. So this is by Billy Hawkins, and I'll just read the first part of the introduction. The November issue of GQ magazine, it should actually mention the year here, because who knows when this was written, featured the article The Selling of Shaq, i.e. Shaquille O'Neal. This title brought to mind the slave auction advertisements used to buy and sell slaves in the United States. During the 17th and 18th centuries, the slave auction advertisements generally gave written descriptions that expounded on the physical abilities of the property, slave, being sold. However, O'Neal was pictured on the cover of this magazine in a designer's suit. Though the exploitation is disguised at the professional level by designer clothes and multi-million-dollar contracts, the exploitation is even greater at the collegiate level, where black athletes are only granted year-to-year scholarships that cover tuition, books, room, and board, while these institutions are benefiting to a far larger extent than the athletes. At both levels, the persistent image of blacks as physically superior is perpetuated and reinforced. The notion of black athletes benefiting in various forms, endorsements, scholarship, commercials, movies, etc., from their physical abilities, and the disproportionate number of blacks in sports have both suggested in this society that blacks are superior athletically. And this article does not... Oh, that's the only page! Okay, but you can kind of see where it's going in terms of the commodification of the human body. That, again, acknowledging someone has a sporting ability doesn't mean you've humanized them to the racist any more than, a white plantation overseer, I should say, would know which people could do the best, the work most efficiently. So, again, this is a ridiculous premise. If sports is more powerful than government in breaking down racial barriers, we have a moral obligation to harness that power to break down racism. So let's just go back and get the full. Here we go.
But for all of us, sport has the...
This guy's from Blaze TV.
Folk sports, and that's a problem.
Fearless on Blaze. Okay, so he's totally a sellout. I mean, I'm sorry. Blaze TV is like white supremacist land, and the fact that this video is basically defending white supremacy shows you that this isn't about equality. It's about maintaining the status quo when it comes to racial hegemony and dominance of white culture in America.
Not just for athletics, but for all of us. Sport has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. It is more powerful than governments in breaking down racial barriers.
So let's not use it. Sorry, the logic, the failure of basic logic here is ridiculous.
It laughs in the face of all types of discrimination. Nelson.
They're literally having players on the field having racist chants yet today. So, citation needed. Players of color have been part of the European sporting, scene for decades. And there are no anti-white chants happening. There are no racially targeted anti-white chants. These are always targeted at people of color. So don't tell me sports is fixed stuff, because it hasn't. Yeah, did it make a contribution? But well, for the players, but that doesn't translate into racial tolerance beyond what you can do for me. Like, you score for my team, I'm happy, but that doesn't change. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be nicer to people of color. Sounds like a fetishism rather than allowing for respect and dignity. Absolutely, Lonely Wolf. Absolutely.
Nelson Mandela spoke those words. The Nobel Peace Prize recipient understood the power of sports to bring disparate people together. There is no better example of this than the famous victory of South Africa's mixed-race team in the 1995 Rugby World Cup.
Why didn't you mention the Nazis getting BTFO'd in the 1930s. Also, 1995 South Africa. Yeah, you know, like there was so much going on around apartheid, and these symbolic things, they're performative. You have to show me they're transformative. It might have made people feel good, but what difference did it make, right? And if you still have all of the racisms like you have in America, then sports isn't fixing the problem.
Mandela's presentation of the Winners' Trophy to team captain Francois Pienaar stands as an iconic symbol of unity in post-apartheid South Africa.
I honestly don't even remember this. I mean, I'm not a sports person. Again, this is so, in some ways, skewed toward, you know, one part of the population that enjoys sports. There's a vast swaths of the population that just aren't into this stuff. And in terms of unity, again, performative. I don't care about the symbol of unity in post-apartheid South Africa. I want to know about the actual policies. And if you're focused on performativity or performances, then you're not actually interested in substance. And this is what, again, another thing, you know, that like racially apathetic people will do is they will overemphasize performative actions and yet oppose substantive action. I think, yeah, on a tangent. I actually, in my Twitter conversations yesterday, had someone try to quote MLK, the I Have a Dream speech, and someone had given me the meme, I see you have quoted Martin Luther King out of context rather than deal with the complex reality of white supremacy. Would you like help with that? And it's in the shape of Clippy, the paperclip from the old school Microsoft Word thing. And this person was saying that that MLK would oppose critical race theory. Wait. Just, it gets better. It gets better than that. It gets better than saying MLK would oppose critical. This is I'm sure a white person. It's, you know, one of those coward accounts on YouTube, or sorry, on Twitter, where they don't give their location, they don't give their name, they use a profile, they hide, you know, so that they can be horrible people, and not have any accountability. But they actually said MLK would oppose critical race theory because they didn't think people should be judged by the color of their skin. And I was like, what do you think? Can you just remind me what Martin Luther King said about the white moderate? And I have to check. They didn't get back to me for a couple hours after that, so I will have to check it today. But yeah, mind blown. King was very critical of white people. And you know, he had certain criticisms, but, you know, like by the time he wrote Letter from a Birmingham Jail, you know, he had kind of like reconciled himself with the kind of brainless, mindless hate of white supremacy. But what really made him mad were apathetic white people who wanted to police the timetable of Black Americans' freedom and gatekeep, you know, like what could or couldn't be done. So, coward account. Yeah. Hey, Poem Mama. Sid, good to see you as well. Yes. So, it's not about, just get rid of performativity and show me results. And this sort of like symbol of South Africa, yada, 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 is completely performative. Now, if I turn, all right, I see. I'm looking away from it. Okay, I'm going to swap my screen a little bit because I don't like it when I think it looks silly when I'm looking in the wrong direction of the thingamabob. You know what I'm talking about. The screen. I find it very disturbing. Not disturbing. Distracting. So, here I'm gonna switch you around. I know. Oh, it's gonna feel weird now for a while, people. But you'll handle it. We'll get there. All right, so now when I look at the screen, I'm looking at the screen. So that... Okay. It's really hard to look one way and then keep face one way and then look the other. Super hard. Okay. Hitting play.
Sports have served as a powerful racial unifier in America as well. This is not new. It goes back decades. In 1930...
Again, you're assuming that because people play sports together and athletes get along, that has an effect on the society. And it kind of might over decades. But also, can I just point out, why are they saying get sports out of politics when they spent the entire first minute describing the power sports has to bring people together in order to heal racial divisions? Isn't this a little undermining of your own argument?
36, the great black sprinter and long jumper Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals at the Berlin Olympics. In 1938, the great black
Why don't you mention why that's important? What was happening? Oh, maybe they'll get there.
boxer Joe Louis scored a first-round knockout over German heavyweight Max Schmeling. The Owens and Louis victories punctured Hitler's Aryan superiority myth, unified black and white America.
This is it's a very interesting rhetorical tactic to convince your audience that sports and politics can be a positive force for society, and have been a powerful force for society, and have engaged with difficult issues of racism in society, but not now. Like, it was fine in the 1930s, it was fine in the 1940s, it was fine in the 1950s and 60s, it was fine in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, but not today. Can't have any sports today. Can't do anything about racial awareness today. This is an interesting rhetorical tactic. Basically, concede you're wrong first. It's be interesting now that he's built up this really strong case for the use of politics and sports in order to break down racist assumptions. He's going to argue we should keep politics out of sports when it comes to taking on racist assumptions. Very interesting.
Americans in pride and celebration, and established Owens and Louis as America's first black national heroes. Jesse Owens.
Can we just point out that they were national heroes who then went back to a segregated country? They were national heroes who wouldn't be served in some restaurants. They were national heroes who couldn't, play golf in some, in probably any golf course, or go into Madison Square Garden and go on stage. So what does it mean to be a national hero when you're a second-class citizen in your own country? Is this really just white people using black bodies again for their political agenda against Hitler? Yeah, it is.
And Joe Louis laid the foundation for Brooklyn Dodgers general manager Branch Rickey's partnership with black baseball legend Jackie Robinson to integrate Major League Baseball in the late 1940s.
Now, what they leave out is the economic suffering, the economic devastation that had on players in the Negro Leagues. Because of segregation, black players had established the Negro Leagues. I think it's in Kansas or Missouri, one of those two. It might be in Kansas City, but I don't know if it's Missouri or Kansas. There is the Negro Baseball Hall of Fame, Negro League Baseball Hall of Fame, and there were amazing players, baseball players of that era who had, I think one of them were the Monarchs. There were a bunch of other team names. And when integration happened, white people came and just took all the best players, and they didn't hire the rest of the people from the Negro Leagues. All of those jobs were lost because white people wanted to come along and suck up, just a fraction of the talent available in order to pat themselves on the back and go, "Oh, look how cool we are." But that's not. I bet that's not going to get mentioned. The way that white people just came and cherry picked the talent, and then they were still treated terribly in America.
That in turn inspired Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and the civil rights movement of the 1950s.
I'm pretty sure the integration of baseball was not the main. What kind of connections are you trying to make here? All right, I'm gonna look this up. Desegregation of baseball and MLK. So, Jackie Robinson made my success possible. Without him, I never would have been able to do what I did. Okay, so that, I mean, that's not saying that it was the only thing. I don't think a preacher who mostly drew on his theological and moral frameworks available to him mentioned the power of baseball that many times. But again, what we're learning here from Prager is sports have a powerful influence on breaking down racial barriers. That sports can be used to model an integration, a racial like equity for opportunity and talent and merit for other white people to look at. Because everything is about the white people, of course, in this narrative. Okay, so basically, we should use sports all the time to improve human life, to reduce racism and other bigotries. That's exactly what I'm getting out of this argument.
Obama credited Robinson for his political rise. There's a direct line between Jackie Robinson and me standing here, said America's first black president.
But what they're not focusing on is the fact that Robinson was harassed and he was endured racial abuse constantly. But that pain isn't acknowledged. It's just this sort of stolen valor of people here who want to pretend that the white people in that era were not freaking horrific in their racism. They just want to do the plot on the back without explaining the evils of the system. You know, this is quite common, I find, in the white. I don't want to call it whites. It is white supremacist, but we're gonna call it the whitewashed construction of American myth. And someone mentioned this before. I'm not being completely original with this, but if you look at MLK, I think it was Eddie Glaude Jr., Professor Eddie Glaude Jr., I was listening to discuss MLK yesterday. And he mentioned that because King gave that speech of the I Have a Dream speech that was compatible with and could be co-opted by white America, that he, in the American mythos, was cherry-picked because that is a confirming thing that America is a great country. America is it's a holy place. It's got a destiny. It's chosen by God. This isn't me. This is right-wingers, but there's a lot of white people who are evangelicals who think. And the idea is, you strip King of his being a democratic socialist, of his union positions and activism, of his criticism of white people, especially not even white racist people. But he leveled profound and powerful criticism at apathetic, moderate, I'm not a racist, white people. And all of that is stripped out of him. And all they put into his mouth is judged on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And he's put up next to Washington and Jefferson and Lincoln as proof that America is a progressive country and that we are getting better, but not acknowledging all of the suffering that he experienced in his lifetime. So this is, sort of again, this way of whitewashing out the horrific racism and pain and suffering caused because of white supremacy in the white culture and enacted by white people of the time. So
Obama saw what Mandela saw, how sports transcends all barriers.
So again, you're making a great case for keeping politics in sports. Is anyone else that's what I hear?
When you see this group of folks of different shades coming from different communities and then playing as one team and celebrating each other and being joyous in that tells us something about America. Sports, in other words, is the ultimate equalizer. In competition, what matters is winning. That means excellence matters. And both are colorblind.
No. I mean, there is a lot, you want to pretend like we're in a post-racial society when we're simply not. The whole thing about black bodies and people being reduced to the usefulness they can provide to certain, to racist white people for their consumption and their entertainment. And also, weirdly, if they're a supporter of that team, to vicariously take that win from that black player while still maintaining racist attitudes. I am positive that if you went through all of the people who were convicted or been arrested, I guess there's only starting to be a few convictions now, but who started the process, who participated in the insurrection, they're all sports fans, right? And yet they're going to hold horrific views on BLM protesters and blame black people for things. So again, this whole thing of patting yourselves on the back when it reinforces the white narrative of white goodness, and yet always omitting that it was white people who were causing the problem, is how white supremacy is replicated from generation to generation. White kids who are being indoctrinated into the belief that the founding fathers are almost these holy, mystic men who handed down a quasi-divine document, and they were so good, and yeah, they had slaves, but oh well. This compartmentalization of crimes against humanity when the perpetrators of the crimes are white is part of the reason why white supremacy has been sustained. It's because as a white culture, we don't have norms of how to have healthy criticisms of national icons in a mature way that allow their ideas and the things that they contributed that were good to be acknowledged, but also to acknowledge the hypocrisy and the harm and the torture and the inhumanity of these men. So again, just waiting for the argument why we should get politics out of sports, because it's been 2.5 minutes of why it should be in it.
Sports allow us to experience the power of pure meritocracy, the only way to govern sports and the only way to govern life. But
I'm sorry, if you really love meritocracy, then we have to do 100% tax on inheritance. Like you can't possibly tell me that you believe in a meritocracy if people are allowed to inherit wealth. Now, I'm not personally for that, because, I mean, that would be massively disruptive and it would be very unpopular. And I don't even know of any legislative body in a democracy that would pass that, because you know what? My dad has, money that he wants to make sure that my brother and I get. And I get that. But then, don't call it a meritocracy when, Mitt Romney never earned what he got. He might have worked during the process of it, but he didn't earn it when he had all of these privileges that put him in a place where he was almost destined for success. And he had to do, not that much. He didn't do more work than someone who was on a scholarship or on using Pell Grants. In fact, the Pell Grants kid is probably working harder because they have to hold down a job while they're going to school. So don't tell me about meritocracy. You don't believe in meritocracy if you have a society where you have black players, but all the people who own the teams are white. And they own the teams because they come from money. And that money comes from money that came from exploiting, Native Americans and black people. That's not meritocracy. They didn't earn that. They started out with a big head start. Okay.
But now, all this storied history and the positive message of sports are being undone. In September 2016.
Oh no, by standing up for racial equality, we're tearing down racial equality. Does that make sense? Seriously, does it really make sense that in 2016, the act, the personal, private freedom of speech act of kneeling suddenly became incompatible with the power sports has to try to eliminate racial discrimination? This is garbage. This is, what dupes? how credulous, what kind of credulous fools would not think that this is ridiculous. It's like, hey, yeah, taking a position on racial equality, taking a position against discrimination was fine in the 1930s, fine in the 1940s, it was fine in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, and when it was, South Africa and it was Mandela, oh, that was so cool, look at this, like, we're using sports to try to tear down racism. But now Black American athletes, instead of obsequiously enduring the racist abuse that like Jackie Robinson had to endure almost a century before, are using their platforms to say, look, I am a person beyond this field. And in that street, out in those streets, if I see a cop, my athleticism won't protect me because I walk around in a racist America with dark skin. And so what you want is for me to separate this out and say, I have a target on my back whenever I'm outside the stadium, but inside the stadium, I can't talk about that part of my life. I can't talk about the violence I see against people who look like me simply for looking like me. And I can't talk about the fact that we can't talk about this. Just shut up and play, right? Don't be a human being. I mean, this is what Laura Ingraham was saying, right? Don't be a full human being. Just entertain me. I'm a white person with money. I pay you so that you put your body out there on the field to get hurt for my entertainment, and that's your job. And you should just thank me for it. How is that not exactly the white supremacist structure that sports apparently is meant to undermine? Good Mother, kneeling is what a veteran told Colin Kaepernick that vets do at the graves of their fallen comrades, and Black people who know Black people who've died at the hands of police and other state violence. We're doing the same thing. It is the least disrespectful thing to take a knee in front of the flag. Really? Really? I mean, seriously, what shows more honor? Standing with your hand up or actually just like getting down on one knee? I think what offends you is the idea that it's not merely flag worship, that it's actually talking about sacrifice. Like, if they were taking a knee for veterans of war, you wouldn't have a problem. But when they take a knee for victims of police brutality, to take a stand against violence against against their fellow Americans, that's suddenly disrespectful? Honoring the dead who died at the hands of a military, like a state power wrongly? That's disrespectful. That's I know you want attention. I know you're here to get attention. And I'm laughing at a lot of your comments because you're so obviously thirsty for attention. But I just wanted to debunk this idea that kneeling is disrespectful. It's just not. It's just not. I know your fifis are really important. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't stand freedom of expression when it doesn't conform to my aesthetic demands. But if you actually believe in free speech, then you need to STFU about other people and their free speech rights. If you want to be honest that you want to repress people's speech and you want to crack down on any acknowledgement of racial harm, you want to crack down on the idea that state summary executions, you're cool with that, yeah, that's fine, but then you can go make your own channel and do your own stuff. Because most people find that evil.
NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick took a knee. That is refused. Oh
my God, churches. Oh, yes, thank you. Who is that? Lucky Wanderer. Churches everywhere are filled with offensive people kneeling. The Catholics are the most offensive religion because they kneel. Nice. Nice. Oh, you're so, yes. See, like little whiny people in the chat are so entertaining. But it's a good point. Like, taking his knee is not at all disrespectful. It's done silently, it's done quietly, and honestly, if the cameras weren't pointed at the players when they were doing it, you wouldn't even know. But I just love the arrogance of someone looking at a quiet protest of a person and thinking, I'm an American, stop their speech. I believe in the Constitution and their free expression. This is hurting my feelings. This is making me feel uncomfortable. You must stop. Use the power of the state. Stop their speech, and protect my freedom to not be offended.
To stand during the national anthem. His defenders say his protest wasn't about the flag, but Kaepernick said otherwise.
Look, it is about systemic violence against people of color in America. And that is associated with the flag. It might be an issue he's not objecting to the flag itself, but the flag is a symbol of the state, and the state is killing people. Summary executions, kneeling on people's necks until they die, shooting them in the back, tasing them when they are on private property and allowed to be there. This amount of, and that's not just 2021. This has been sustained violence by white police officers against people of color forever in American history, because it was whites who were, on the slave patrols, getting paid a little bit of money to preserve the property of way richer white people who didn't care about them. So, it's amazing how all of this politics is fine until it's a black man doing it, in a way that they don't like. All of the other politics was fine, but somehow this isn't.
I am not going to stand up to show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses black people and people of color.
You should actually not oppresses and murders. I mean, that's the only thing I would add. And here's the thing is, that's his right. That's actually his right. He has a free right. He has a freedom of expression, right? He has a right of conscience. And here's the thing is, if you don't like it, good mother, don't look. Don't look. The TV cameras could say, we're not going to show players kneeling. Like, we are going to take a policy of we're not going to sensationalize this because it's meant to be a private protest, right? They could do that. But the idea that somehow we're meant to bully, how is bullying people into and denying them their rights of free expression American? You say, oh, not at work. Are people allowed to wear religious jewelry at work? Of course they are. Of course they are. They might have to put it under their shirt. And Colin Kaepernick wasn't running out to the middle of the field, right? He was just, as everyone else was doing their thing, he took a knee. How is that different from someone wearing a symbol of their religious beliefs at their workplace? It's not. The thing is that the problem was that white people didn't want to be reminded of the slaughter of black people when they were trying to have a good time. I mean, isn't that really what this is about? White people are like, hey, I'm here to watch football. I don't want to think about your life as a black athlete when you leave the stadium, Colin Kaepernick. I'm just here to watch your body, to use it as entertainment. And I don't want to think about the fact that when you leave the stadium, you could be shot dead by police if they don't recognize you as an athlete. How is that? How can you think of yourself as a good person? When you say, I don't care if you're killed by police, shut up and play. You're a sociopath at that point. You're so selfish and egotistical. You are willing to ignore the suffering of others because you have to have 30 seconds of slight discomfort remembering the murder of George Floyd, or go through the list, right? And as a white person, you can mentally check out after watching Colin Kaepernick kneel because you don't live in a white America that kills you. So again, this is such selfishness and self-centeredness on the part of white viewers who want to extract enjoyment and pleasure and entertainment for themselves out of people and then not care that they might be murdered by cops when they leave the stadium. It's pathological. Good mother, you are flailing? I'm not going to read it, but people in the chat should just point and laugh because it is quite ridiculous. I think it's buzzword bingo.
He told the press. We all know what happened next. Players across the NFL followed Kaepernick's lead, kneeling, locking arms, and even raising fists during...
Oh my gosh, like the athlete. Oh yeah, you didn't mention the 1964 athlete. Was it 1964? Yeah, it's interesting. Fist Olympics. Is that? I know it was in the 1960s. Oh, 68. Yeah, interesting, huh? Interesting how the racist Blaze narrative left out this part of their showing off the role that sports plays in breaking down racial barriers. You know why they left this out? You know why this isn't acceptable? Why this part, they didn't even bring it up? It's because this is no different from what Colin Kaepernick and the other players did. It is using your platform to raise awareness that you, off of this field, could be killed. That you are living under oppression. That while you're here performing for all of these rich white people who don't have to worry about being pulled over by the cops and shot when you're handing over your license, they do. And they want to remind you, we are oppressed. We are not merely bodies for your entertainment. So it's again, very selective. It's very entertaining. Hey, Lee, thank you so much for the $2. It is interesting what they omit in their narrative. There are certain performative acts that they will give their imprimatur, their approval to. But actually, like another example where people rightly brought attention to their oppression while they were being used as representatives of America and American freedom while they were not free. See, PragerU can't have that because that gives a historical justification to Colin Kaepernick and other players who have kneeled for the same reason. Because when they leave the field, they're still oppressed. And when you want me to represent the city of Dallas, and yet the city of Dallas is, got cops that are going to kill me, what am I representing here? So somehow this is offensive, but the other stuff wasn't.
In the national anthem. Then athletes from other sports joined in.
You know why? Because they too live in an America where they are applauded by, whites in the stadiums, and then if they're pulled over by cops, they could be murdered. And no white person really has to live with that fear. I'm not saying cops don't shoot white people. What I'm saying is, when I'm pulled over by the police, I'm worried about a ticket, not a bullet. And that's two different Americas. And the idea that Black Americans have to protect white Americans from the knowledge of the oppression that their system is engaged in against them. So the argument here is Black players have to protect white Americans from thinking about the fact the government that our ancestors created and we have the most power over is oppressing them off the field. We can't be reminded of that during sports because it might ruin our enjoyment. White people's enjoyment loss, right? Black people's emotional stress, pain, suffering, fear, constant worrying, right? Like, white people have it so good, and you're complaining about having to sit through somebody kneeling. STFU. You babies.
Ironically, just as sports has the power to unite, we have discovered it also has equal power to divide.
Again, this is ignoring the fact that, when white audiences were quite happy to consume Jackie Robinson and then spit on him and call him the N-word when he was off the field. So don't tell me that Black players are the ones who are being divisive here. It's the society in America that is divisive and oppressive. And the sports arena, why should that be a bubble where white people can basically indulge their double standards of saying, oh, look at you, you're the best of America, but I don't want to talk about your actual life. Your only purpose is for my entertainment. How is that not white-centered white supremacy? How is that different from everything else? The exploitation of white people of others, right? That's our history. We're trying to break that trend, and this standing the I don't want to think about I don't want to think about black athletes as real people in order to protect white people's entertainment.
On opening day 2021, Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred stripped Atlanta of the All-Star game as punishment for Georgia politicians' passage of a voter integrity bill.
Again, how is that any different? Oh, wait. I'm trying to figure out what was the difference between like the 1930s Olympics and Jackie Robinson, right? And I'm trying to figure out some sort of metric by which when politics is good, based on their omissions and their inclusions. So what did they include? They included, Jackie Robinson being in an integrated team, but didn't talk about the fact that he still faced discrimination off the pitch or off the field, right? Talked about Jesse Owens and the other person, the boxer whose name I'm not a sports fan. He didn't mention that they went back to a segregated America. America was using these black men in the Olympics in order to say America is better than Germany, and then when they got back to America, the laws that Hitler passed were inspired by the segregation laws of white people in America, except he couldn't do them as strict as Americans could. So white double standards seems to be a criteria for when politics is okay. It was when white people feel better about themselves but don't actually change the system or don't deal with the problems of the system. Jackie Robinson too, because in that time period, if he reacted to the racism, he would have been condemned. So he had to silently endure years of racial abuse, for being in the integrated system and being discriminated against outside of baseball. When Nelson Mandela went and gave a trophy to a white person, that was, again, performative. So it seems that the only time PragerU thinks politics is appropriate in sports is when it is basically giving cover to white supremacy. It's when it's not threatening, or challenging in any meaningful way white people's use of black bodies for their entertainment or for their monetary gain. Oh, well, they're free now and they make money. Yeah, but, it's still white people writing the checks. What was it Chris Rock said? It was that, it's like a basketball player is rich, but the person who writes their checks is wealthy. Right? So you don't get to throw some money at people and go, oh, you're free now. So it just seems like when sports is attempting to make change outside of sports, in other words, when we're trying to actually remedy the terrorist, sort of the feelings of being menaced by police, of not feeling safe, of microaggressions, of the obvious racial biases in job hiring and lending and housing, when we actually try to focus on the denial of Americans of their rights based on the color of their skin, somehow that's too far. This is ridiculous. This is such a garbage video.
Bowing to the political mob that cast half of America as racist, the move fractured baseball's fan base. The entire American sports world, a culture that celebrated victors, colorblindness.
Again, no. They didn't celebrate colorblindness. And they white people were terribly racist to Jackie Robinson and all the other players. They still lived in a segregated America. You're not talking about that. You want to celebrate Jackie Robinson living in a segregated place where he couldn't go and sit at a counter with his fellow teammates. Why should we celebrate that? I mean, yeah, celebrate Robinson, but don't celebrate the fact that that was the America that he had to endure in order to make white people emotionally comfortable. Where is this power of sports to transform it if what you're saying is that athletes aren't, unless they're white, they don't have a personhood outside of the stadium that we have to care about.
and patriotism.
What? Like, what? Again, the 4th of July was not a holiday for people of color in America. It was about white men's independence. And white women's, to an extent, like once we were allowed to have some rights, because that's not what oppressors do. If America was such a free place, we wouldn't have we have to make such efforts to unpack this oppression that was the foundational structure, the white supremacist patriarchy. So, like, in terms of patriotism, I know, again, this is about white people feeling good about themselves, but it doesn't provide any humanity to the athletes. And that it was the problem with white supremacy from the start, is that it dehumanizes other people. So, again, patriotism is not, if anything, patriotism justifies why we should not even be debating kneeling. Patriotism and freedom of expression is a reason why people who are, want to express themselves by just kneeling during, actually, I don't really care how they do. They want to express themselves during the anthem. That's their right. And it's terrifying to think that people who think they're pro-freedom are the ones who want to enforce thought, control and thought policing and gatekeeping and saying, no, I own you right now, right? I, as the fan, I own your time. And I don't want to see you doing anything that I don't like. Tell me how that's different from a slave mentality, like a slave owner's mentality. That sense of entitlement, of ownership. I get to control your body. You don't get to kneel on my time, says the white racist, right? You're here to make me feel good about myself, not think about the fact that you're suffering, your community is suffering, that we have centuries of African Americans who've suffered, or Black Americans who've suffered. Entertain me. Make me feel better about myself. Salute that flag. You can almost fill in the racial slur after that, right? Because that's America. Ooh, I'm going to wave my Confederate flag. Ooh, I'm an American. Don't kneel, Colin Kaepernick. That's bad. But history, not heritage. I'm flying the flag of rebels and traitors to show I'm a patriot. And I'm going to judge you, Colin Kaepernick, for silently taking a knee because your people are being murdered by cops on the reg. Get out. I hope our little right-wing troll is going to have a real fun time hearing ideas that are so uncomfortable. Oh.
Has immersed itself in victimization and left-wing radicalism.
They're literally being murdered on the streets. People are being murdered on the streets. That's not victimization. And it's not left-wing radicalism unless you think basic human rights are left-wing, which would make sense why you would oppose them if that's the case.
This immersion threatens permanent damage both to American sports and...
Who is being damaged? Honestly, who is being damaged by Colin Kaepernick or anyone kneeling? What is being damaged other than the racist feelings of a couple, some racists for a few seconds out of their day? Here's the thing, if you don't want to watch people kneel, leave the room. Go to the toilet. Go order a pizza. Don't turn on the game until after the anthem. There you go, problem solved. Your little precious fifis being reminded that Black people are more than just athletes that are bodies, running around on the field. They're human beings who live under a system we benefit from as white people, and we don't have to worry about, but we don't mind that they do. Their emotional stress, their daily lives are, we only care about it when they're on the field, right? Honestly, I swear to God, this like the selfishness of some white people.
Into the larger American culture. Once again, Kaepernick takes the lead. He no longer plays football. He is now a professional influencer. He hawks his political message.
I'm sorry, what are you doing right now? Are you hawking a political message for a right-wing group that wants to stand in the way of racial progress? Oh yeah, that's you. I'll take Kaepernick, thank you.
In partnership with Nike, the $40 billion a year puppet master of
Capitalism is bad. PragerU 2021. I find this so amusing. It's not that they believe in capitalism, because they'll attack profitable companies for saying things they don't like. Right-wingers are like the most fragile, hypersensitive victim card playing group in the world.
Of American sports, Kaepernick, LeBron James, and Nike's other brand influencers are making millions off amplifying.
What do you think white people have done, or like white owners have done with black athletes their entire careers? Are you mad because these guys are earning the money directly, and there's not like a mediator of a coach or someone who's gonna negotiate their time? Why are you so offended? Well, because he had made some good points, I think.
Racial wounds. It's a cynical and brilliant business strategy.
Hello, dude. This is a cynical and profitable business strategy. You're astroturfed by right-wing extremists, who want to make sure that regardless of the percentage of white population in America, that American culture is always controlled by a white perspective, that all the money is being held by white people, that all the political power is held by white people. I mean, that's what gerrymandering is about. So don't tell me about like these cynical ploys, because that is PragerU. It's Prager. I'm not even saying the U because they're so garbage.
It explains why pro sports, especially the National Basketball Association, seem more concerned about how they are perceived in China than they are here in America.
It's so weak. God, how long ago was that China thing? I gotta look. This is 2021. How long ago? So, this just came out like yesterday or this week. Was that like pre-COVID, wasn't it? I don't really follow these issues. It was 2 years ago. They're still going on about a tweet. This is October of 2019. It is dusty. It is old. Like, nobody knows. I mean, I guess, when you want to whip up racial resentment and fear, I guess you would keep bringing it up, which makes sense why the Blaze would be doing it. But honestly, get some new material. Ain't nobody caring about a tweet from 2019 or a little drama from 2019 right now that's been like dead and gone forever.
China is a huge market. Its 1.4 billion citizens have more sneaker spending power than America's 333 million. It's simple math.
Oh my gosh, capitalism is evil, you guys. Catering to your customer base is evil. These guys are definitely against the free market and this capitalism that basically, makes sure corporations aren't loyal to any particular set of principles or government, but rather try to maximize their customer base. Oh my gosh, if only Adam Smith had warned us that this was the logic of capitalism.
The $8 billion a year NBA is the marketing arm of...
What is this class warfare? What is this class? Why are you hating on money? I thought conservatives loved money. That the money was proof that you were doing something right. I'm so confused. There's just so many different messages on the same topics. I can't remember what my talking points are for my right-wing agenda because they're everything now.
Nike's $40 billion a year global business. To state it plainly, Nike is driving...
When did this become an anti-Nike ad? Why isn't this get Nike out of sports? They've not made a good argument for why we need to get politics, meaning like Black people trying to get acknowledgement that they're human beings in more than just being athletic entertainment for the masses. I don't see a good argument for getting politics out of sports other than it makes some people slightly uncomfortable to have to think about the reality of a racial oppression in America. And I don't get this anti-capitalist Marxist, what is this socialist video? This capitalist hating video that's going on here with Prager. Why do they want to overturn? Why do they want to destroy capitalism and make it a tool of the state? This seems kind of dangerous to me.
American sports. That's why team owners, coaches, and players are so willing to call America racist, but remain silent on China's egregious treatment of its.
Go back at this. Okay, all right. Okay, logical fallacy. Logical fallacy. Here's the thing. If you're an American living in America, experiencing American oppression because you're a Black American in a white America, in a culturally hegemonic white America that hasn't fully dealt with its racist past yet, you can say, I as an American want to use my free speech rights to affect policy in the United States, and never say anything about China. Because you know what? Your position on China is irrelevant to your position on the United States. And people do this. I mean, this is, I guess if you're not very smart, this might sound like a good argument. But it's literally completely unrelated. They're not at all related. If I say I'm criticizing America's system of racism as an American, you know, like my opinion on China is whatever, but I don't have to have a special opinion on China to have a legitimate opinion on America. This, again, is a tactic for the mentally weak who can't actually form an argument. So they use logical fallacies. In this case, this is like a red herring, or is it a false comparison? But basically, the reason it's fallacious is they're saying your position on American repression isn't legitimate unless you also hold this specific position on Chinese oppression, which is completely unrelated and you probably don't know anything about, because China's complicated political history is something that takes study. But rather than try to actually present a coherent argument, what Prager is saying is these Black athletes are commie lovers, I guess, in order to discredit them. So Lucky Wanderer says, a lot of social conservatives who are capitalists rarely realize that their anger at social progressivism is often a critique of the free market. Absolutely. Like, what they don't know would fill a book. Absolutely.
Minorities and suppression of freedom in Hong Kong.
Why not? Why don't you make the criteria the cutoff? What Russia's doing in Ukraine, or what is happening in Brazil, or what is happening in Canada? I mean, again, this is why it's logically fallacious. What happens in China is completely unrelated to American policies and laws. And if the best you can do is go, China, don't look at America, don't think about America, don't criticize it, just, hey, they're not willing to criticize these commies, so that means they're commies. Don't listen to their arguments. Be afraid, be very afraid. That's it. This is all they have. Seriously, if anyone can give me a summary of one coherent argument against freedom of expression in sports, given the fact that they've already acknowledged and established with multiple facts the power of sports to improve racial, or to deal with racial problems, bring light to racial problems. Your argument could be, unless white people get something out of using Black bodies to make them feel better about themselves, we shouldn't talk about politics. Unless the politics in sports validates white egos, we can't talk about it. Maybe, is that it? Hi, Faye Queen Corey, by the way.
Ultimately,
I'm almost done.
The fans hold the power. They buy the tickets, the shoes, and the merchandise.
Well, but isn't Nike like a really successful corporation? Aren't fans like lining up to buy tickets and watch stuff? So if Colin Kaepernick and all these kneelers were really ruining the sport, we would have seen the effects already. But here's the fact. It hasn't. It hasn't. And Nike is a very profitable company. It's just not going to cater to like white racists or just racist people. Like not even just white, like any kind of racist.
Watch what they do. If they accept sports as just another arena to fight political battles, you'll know darn.
Wait. Wasn't sports the arena where we were fighting political battles in the 1930s? And Jackie Robinson and Nelson Mandela? Again, this criteria, you didn't even you omitted the Black Power salute in 1968 because that legitimizes Kaepernick, so that's a lie of omission. But I don't see the necessary and sufficient conditions that you've outlined that allow you to police when politics and sports is okay and when it's not. And it seems the only thing I see is, does it make white people feel better about the system of oppression that we as a culture are not yet dealing with? That's the only criteria I can infer, because I was never given any example of why the first series of sports were in politics and sports was okay, but this ain't.
Days are ahead. If they reject it, we'll be headed back to a brighter future.
Oh, if we don't talk about racial equality, white people who are racist and don't care about state-sponsored murder will have less, it won't have to think about it for like 30 seconds once a week. I felt, I was worried for them. I was really worried that maybe occasionally apathetic white people who are tuned out because they're, in their lives and don't have a lot of experiences might have to think outside of their own experiences to the lives of their fellow Americans. Their fellow Americans whom, as children, when they pledged as white kids that America was a country of liberty and justice for all, and they believe that, we don't want to make like apathetic or even racist white people think about justice for all, not just for themselves, right? I mean, imagine that. Imagine, sitting down, ready to watch your football game. You've got, you're halfway tanked because you've been drinking Bloody Marys. Okay, Wisconsin in me is coming up. Bloody Marys since 10:30 in the morning, right? With beer chasers. You're feeling a buzz. You've got, you got your nacho cheese laid out. You got your buffalo wings. You got all of your fixings for your Bloody Marys, and you got your beer. And you sit down. You're like, oh, go, Pat, go. Doom, 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 go, Pat, go. And then everyone has to pause and stand and wait for the anthem. And like, okay, you're eating your popcorn, and you see a couple black players and maybe even a white player kneel. And then you have to think, oh my gosh, police brutality is an ongoing problem faced by people of color across the United States, and that black people are far more likely to be shot dead by police when unarmed compared to white people. And, here are some players who are worried about their lives offside the field, off of the field. That's it. I can't watch football now. That's it. My day is ruined. I had to think about the existence of racism. I had to think about police brutality for 30 seconds, and my day is ruined. Like, imagine what it would be like to be a black person who has to live with that from the morning, like when they wake up to when they go to bed. Oh my gosh. Won't somebody think of the poor white people who have to think for 30 seconds, maybe even a minute, about the existence of racial injustice and brutality in America? Can't have that. Okay. I think I'm done being snarky. That's me done for the day. This went longer than I thought. I didn't realize I would have so many rants. But this is a garbage video. This is seriously, I mean, Prager is always garbage. Always, always, always garbage. But this in particular is one of their least coherence. I really don't get the whole super secret double probation plan of spending half the video explaining why politics in sports has been a really beneficial thing, and then deciding unilaterally that now this particular politics in sports we don't like, Nike is bad, China is bad, therefore Colin Kaepernick should kneel. It's such garbage. Aaron, says, if you see a protest against racism as a personal attack, you are admitting to racism. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Good snark would watch again. All right. Well, as hinted by two of my players in the chat, I do have... Okay, so we'll get this off the garbage. I mean, I might actually clip... I don't know how much energy to deal with this, but I could see myself clipping this just to say, hey, you know what's a really good way to set up your argument to get politics out of sports is to spend half your video explaining why it's a good thing to have politics in sports. But yeah, so we'll see if I actually follow through and can come up with a slightly new format next week. Thank you all for stopping by. Again, next week in our Nerd Corner, we will be continuing on. Oh, that was what I was going to do. I was like, I was going to do something, and then I forgot what it was. But it was this. I was going to change the camera angle. Yeah, so we will do, at the end of next week's show, 20 more minutes on the philosophy of social science. We are working our way through various concepts. Last time it was structural Marxism, and next time we're going to talk about Kuhn and the idea of scientific revolutions and how those happen. So, and then I think, oh no, that's way far away. Critical realism isn't until chapter 7. So, let me just give you a preview of what that is. So we've got, yes, revolutions and relativism from Kuhn to the Strong Program. Then gender and science will be the week after that. That is the feminist vision. And it will probably be, will be the first time we talk specifically about feminist critiques of the natural sciences and also behaviorism in the social sciences as to the dehumanization of people that happens when you do a quantitative survey approach, and also the advocacy for qualitative research and its emergence as a method of research. Then after that, there is a section called The Reflexive Turn, Constructing Nature and Society, then conclusions and further readings, and then chapter 5 are interpretive approaches. So we have a lot of geek to get through this summer. Maybe by September, I'd say we'd be done. But yeah, I'm babbling now. I'm going to go. I need to finish prepping for my DM session later on. So thank you guys for stopping by. Whatever that troll was, thank you for being hilarious. That was just some really silly, ridiculous comments. And yeah, I'll see you guys next Sunday. Have a great day wherever it is, whenever it is, wherever it is you are. Stay healthy, stay safe, get vaccinated if you haven't been already. And until next time, I have been Kristi, and y'all have been awesome. We will see each other, in the happy hour on Friday, D&D sessions on my other channel, and if not any of those times, then definitely next week Sunday. So, bye!